Hey, so thank you for tuning into the Progressive Parent YouTube channel. The topic of today's discussion is children misbehaving, because if you're an advocate of positive parenting or attachment parenting, and some people say progressive parenting or philosophical parenting, you might often come against this question, which is, well, I like what you're saying in theory, but sometimes children misbehave, so what do you do? And I would like this broadcast to serve as a precursor for another resource I want to put out soon called Alternatives to Punishment That Really Work. So please subscribe if you haven't already to stay tuned. And you can actually help me with that one by leaving a YouTube comment on this video giving an example of any situation in which you think you or someone you might know might think is an appropriate situation to punish a child, and what punishment they would suggest for that particular behavior, so that we can look at alternative ways of dealing with those situations. I hope this resource will help you respond more effectively when someone says something like, well, children misbehave sometimes, so if you don't believe in force or punishment or threatening sanctions or even rewards, which I call bribes, to get children to behave, then what do you do when they act out? First of all, this is obviously an integral question. It's an important question. What do we do instead? And we should acknowledge that it's a good question before sermonizing. It's also sort of a wrong-minded question because, well, sadly, were it as simple as having one answer that would serve as a magic wand, no one would still be using more coercive means of getting children to cooperate. The truth is, it's kind of like asking, okay, so if we don't spend $1 million on a nuclear bomb, what do we spend it on instead? The answer is, well, anything except the nuclear bomb. Whatever we think we need with $1 million, it depends on the situation at hand. You always have to use your intelligence in every situation to understand why the child is behaving the way they do and work with them rather than imposing consequences which put a real strain on the relationship between the adult and the child, and in the long term might make them more likely to act out in the future out of resentment. So what I'm saying is it's more of an approach or a methodology of approaching things in a certain way rather than a simple, here's what you do instead. It's about understanding the child's needs and why are they behaving the way they are so we can prevent a reoccurrence. Ask yourself, why are they behaving the way they are? How have they been treated in the past that would lead them to think this was a good idea or the best way of getting their needs met or what they want out of the situation? Showing alternative ways that they can get their needs met even better without disrupting others. Empathizing with them so that they know that you're on their side and they want to be on your side as well. Taking the time to build up lots of goodwill between you so that they really want to cooperate. Talking out solutions with them, helping them come up with their own ideas, and negotiating with them so they learn to use negotiation as a way of life instead of force. So these are just some of the things you can use your intelligence and creativity to do when dealing with children when they're being in some way disruptive. Now, when I was a volunteer in primary school, I never punished, threatened, or bribed a child even once, and I was often responsible for the most so-called difficult children in the class because I had the skills to deal with them. It involved a lot of empathizing. So the key is understanding the child's needs in the moment and negotiate. And the more you do that, the more practice the child has in negotiating, and so they would rather do that than act out because they can get what they want by reasoning and discussing, and it feeds into their self-respect and self-esteem. Sometimes it was difficult not using the usual ways, but it was never necessary. I always found an alternative way of dealing with the situation. It's always important to discuss the incident in hindsight when things have calmed down so you can come to agreements over how to deal with similar situations in the future without fighting. Prevention is better than cure. So what we really want to do is be teaching children all the time better ways to communicate. So when things get strained, they can fall back on the communication skills they've learned from you instead of acting out. So ask yourself these questions about the child. Do they know how to express their feelings about things? Daddy, I feel angry that, Mummy, I feel happy because, can they differentiate between different strong and pleasant emotions like feeling angry, frustrated, upset, confused, or do they all sort of muddle together? You can teach them that. You can teach them how to differentiate between their different feelings. How about expressing their needs? Can they easily explain what they want or need and why? Can they express conflicting thoughts? Can they say, well, part of me wants to do this and part of me wants to do that? When they're ambivalent, can they reason? If there's no fuel in the engine, the car won't run. But that doesn't mean if the car won't run, there's no fuel in the engine. It could be something else. Can they identify other people's feelings, thoughts, and needs? Do they understand other people's opinions? Can they discuss them? Can they empathize with other people's feelings when they're expressed? If they can't do these things yet, then you can start to learn expressing yourself in those ways and pass on those essential skills by example. Teach them to do the same as you're doing by pointing out their feelings, by asking them what they need, seeing if you can help them learn to identify them. Ask them, does part of you want to do this and part of you want to do that? Teach them reasoning. Teach them logical fallacies. You can find out about those very easily on YouTube. By expressing your feelings, thoughts, and your own needs, you also teach the child to have more awareness of the inner environment of other people and teach them to empathize. So, to summarize what we've discussed, asking what to do when a child is misbehaving is kind of like asking, what happens if I turn up to a marathon and I'm overweight and I'm wearing really baggy clothes with a hangover and I'm feeling out of shape? Okay, that's an exaggeration, but the idea is you prepare for the marathon in advance. You run every day for weeks or months, you eat healthy, you get a good night's sleep, and the same goes with the kids. You establish ways of talking and conflict resolution with them before you even get in a desperate situation. You teach them these kinds of skills when you're both in a good mood and you learn them yourself. So they can come out and say, Auntie, I am so angry I could just scream. Jeremy did so-and-so. And you can use their expression, their self-expression, their healthy self-expression as a springboard for creating conflict resolution. If you think you would benefit from some coaching on improving your communication skills, whether you want that to improve your relationship with your children or your spouse or your friends or your colleagues, and you can drop me a message here on YouTube or email me at enrichyourlife@outlook.com and I'll see what I can do to help you. Thanks very much for listening. Please share this on Facebook and with anyone you think might find it useful.